This book, it's An Open-Hearted Life, co-authored by Russell Colts and me. Russell is a clinical psychologist at Eastern Washington University. And we really wanted to write something that had the psychological view and the Buddhist view, but was designed for a secular audience. So it was an interesting adventure at writing this. Russell wanted to put in a lot more science stuff and the brain, and I was going, cool it, Russell, our mind and our brain are different. And I wanted to put in more about rebirth and how it influences our character. And he was going, Chodron, cool it. So we wound up doing this, and I think it was pretty successful because, it's approachable by anybody. It isn't a strictly Buddhist book, but it is based on a lot of Buddhist teachings. And so the section we're in right now is about actually how to cultivate compassion, how to which depends on seeing the kindness of others, reducing our self-centeredness, and getting rid of our rules of the universe, the way we think everything should be. So the section, the chapter that we're on now is called Exchanging Self and Others. And so this is based on leveling the playing field, getting rid of or at least reducing the attachment to dear ones, anger, antipathy towards people we don't like, and apathy towards the rest of the world, until they either benefit us, in which case they become a friend and we get attached to them, or they harm us, in which case they shift over to the category of enemy, and we feel entitled to not like them and be angry. So it's leveling all of that, making us emotionally much steadier. Yeah, maybe you've encountered people who, and they may be your friends or your relatives, but you're not quite sure when you meet them each day who they're going to be because their moods vary so much. Yeah. So one day you talk to them and they're happy and sweet and kind and communicative, and the next day nothing's happened, but they're grouchy and they're blaming you. And then the third day, well, let's see, who am I going to meet that day? Maybe they're sleepy that day, or maybe they're happy again, or maybe, they need to vent again. And so it can be very hard, being with people like that. But of course, the thing isn't so much about other people who are like that. It's about us being like that. Okay? And so to try and level things out a little bit so we aren't like an emotional yo-yo up and down and up and down and up and down. And some people may say when they hear that, say, oh, but it sounds so boring. And I remember at a public talk in the Q&A section, somebody asked His Holiness this question, if I don't have big joys and big sufferings, my life is going to be so boring. And I need the suffering to know the joy. Of course, people always say that when they aren't suffering. Yeah. When people are suffering, they never say, I need the suffering to know the joy. They say, get rid of the suffering, I can't stand it. But anyway, somebody's made this comment to His Holiness, about, this emotional vacillation. No, there's another word. Anyway, up and downness. And said, isn't life so boring? And His Holiness, just smiled at them and said, well, I may not have such big ups, but I also don't have such big downs. And that's okay. I like being steady. So it was quite a good answer, I think, for that person. So anyway, that's the first step, to kind of even our mind out a bit. And then from there, move on to see how we are connected with others. And one tradition has us think of sentient beings as all having been our parents and being kind to us. Another way to do it is just looking around us and see the kindness and how our whole life depends on the efforts of people. I mean, I don't know the people at Livestream. Who in the world invented Livestream? I don't know them. I don't know the people at Zoom. I don't know the people who made the microphone or who, made the paper that the book was printed on. But I'm benefiting from all their efforts, even though I have no idea who they are. Yeah. So, because we often think, oh, people are kind only when they directly know that it's me and give me a gift, We don't think of kindness just as our interconnectedness with everybody in the planet and beyond the planet. Okay. We always like when they're kind to me. Yeah. Here's a birthday present for you, even though it's not your birthday. Oh, or they praise me, or they said good things about me. Then those people are wonderful, aren't they? Yeah. But we don't really stop to think how dependent we are on everybody else who we don't know face to face, but who we have received benefit from and who we learn from. Yeah. This morning, before coming here, I watched a little clip on the New York Times, and it was about a young doctor. He was 27 years old, and he was working in ER during, I think it was just a couple of weeks ago, so it was just when the big surge was coming. And somebody coughed in his face, and then he started feeling ill and got sicker and sicker, and he wound up in his own hospital. He was having some kind of intense oxygen treatment, and they were thinking that they were going to have to intubate him, but it wasn't yet. But he was really sick, and they were afraid that they were going to lose him. And he himself, being a doctor, would occasionally open his eyes and look at the numbers on his own machine and go, uh-oh. And, really focused on taking one breath at a time. And he managed to, recuperate, which is amazing. The clip also showed, his mother, was so distressed, the thought of losing her son and just him being so ill. He managed to recover. And then they show how, him walking out of the ICU unit, and the whole medical staff is on each side, applauding and screaming. And, they were so happy because his recovery was their recovery. He was their friend. They were so concerned about it. When he recovered, they were just over the top, also because they had been seeing so much death, and then finally, somebody recovered. So this was just an 8-minute clip, okay? I don't know Andreas. I forget his last name. He was the doctor who was sick. But that clip, and I don't know his mother, But that clip really influenced me. Yeah. And it really made me stop and think not only about the direct kindness of the health workers that of course everybody appreciates, but just it was such a good example of somebody who I don't know, and yet how strongly their influence on me has been. Yeah. And so, as we move through the world, there's so many things that we use and we don't know the people behind them, but those things strongly influence us. Yeah. And so many things influence us in a good way that we just take for granted and we don't really think how kind those people are. Okay. So this is a good example. I'm thinking of Andreas and his mother. I don't know the people who did the clip. Yeah. But boy, they influenced me a lot too by doing that clip. And so, when you look out, we are so interconnected. It's amazing. And so this is really a time in our society to feel that and to get over this attitude of, me and what I want and what I think is right, and so on and so forth. It saddens me when I see some of the people who are protesting at the state capitals with signs that say, give me liberty or give me death, or people who are going out and not keeping, proper social distance, and then say, but it's my right. Yeah, I have a right to walk around. Or, even people having big church functions. There's been a couple of pastors who have been arrested for this, but it's our right to gather together to pray. And yes, it might be our right, but when it's for the benefit of the collective, I think the need of the collective has to trump the right of the individual. Yeah. So I may not like staying at home all the time. Actually, here at the Abbey, it's quite nice. But, if I were cooped up in a one-bedroom flat with 10 people in New York, and many people live in that kind of situation, it would be very difficult to stay home all the time. There's no place to go. Yeah. But when you think about, what is better for society in the long run, what is better for everybody? If I went out and maybe I was asymptomatic, but I was carrying the virus and I infected somebody and they died, even if I don't know that person and I didn't know they got sick and died, yeah, that would be, I wouldn't want that, Even if I didn't even know it happened, I wouldn't want to make anybody else sick. And knowing that somebody else getting sick and dying, the whole ripple effect that would have on their family and friends. So to prevent that, I'm willing to stay home. Yeah. So I really encourage everybody, have this view of what's good for the greater, the long-term greater good. Yeah. because my right, okay, I may have a right to cough in everybody's face and scream at them and insult people and call them names because they're telling me I have to stay home. But doing that doesn't make me any happier. No. And getting my way, okay, I get to go out in the park, I get to cough in somebody's face. Hooray. What kind of pleasure is that going to bring me when I think of the damage it can bring others? Okay. So I'm just using this, because the present situation is such a good example of the teachings that the Buddha gave about this. And our spiritual teachings have to apply to our lives. If they don't apply to our lives, they're not very useful. So, when we really see the kindness of others and our interconnectedness, and how difficult it would be if we have another wave of infection. Because if you think the economy is bad now, another wave of infection is really going to bring it down. So, our taking care of ourselves in a proper way during the pandemic is a gift to others. It's our contribution to the safety of others and to the recovery of the country, and I think to the recovery of the world. And we have been, many people have been fortunate enough to receive a donation from the U.S. taxpayers, in the form of $1,200. It's a donation from the U.S. taxpayers. I appreciate their kindness. And, it's meant for our use, whatever we want to use it for. But you may also consider giving a portion of it to, when you look and you see the lines of people at the food banks, or the doctors and nurses and so on trying to get protective gear, we might consider giving a little bit of the donation we received, passing it forward. It's paying it back, but it's also passing it forward. So paying it forward, that's it. So, just to consider that. Because this is a situation in which our happiness is linked with everybody else's. And actually, it's always linked with everybody else's, because when we behave in ways that harm others, we're harming ourselves, we're harming a whole broad spectrum of people. So yes, I value the rights we have in the Constitution. I value freedom. And it's because I value freedom that I think in situations of crisis, it's okay to give up my personal freedom and my personal rights for the good of others. Okay, so this is, the whole thing of seeing the defects of self-centeredness and the benefits of cherishing others. Okay. And then, so those were 2 chapters that we covered with the last BBC, or the last 2 BBCs, okay? No. Yeah, sharing the Dharma Day. Sorry. We give so many talks around here, I don't know which talk I'm giving anymore. Okay, so sharing the Dharma Day is talking about the faults of self-centeredness, the good qualities of cherishing others. So now we will start chapter 30, which is called Exchanging Self and Others and Taking and Giving. So this is going to get into the taking and giving or Tonglen meditation that is why, it was a secret practice in ancient times. Now it's taught very publicly. People tend to like it, except when it really works. Because it's so nice to think I can take on others' happiness and give suffering. I can take on others' suffering and give them happiness. But then, whenever we get sick, even if it's not from taking on somebody else's suffering, then this whole idea of taking on others' suffering is not very fun at all. And when it comes to giving up our own happiness for others, that isn't very fun either. So that's what I meant. If the meditation works and you actually have to give up happiness and take on suffering, I don't like that. But when I can sit in my comfortable chair with my teacup and, quiet room, perfect environment, and feel very holy, taking on others' suffering, giving them my happiness. Then I like the meditation. And when I have to put it into practice, no, not so much. But that's why we do the meditation, because meditation is on the level of imagination. And sometimes in your meditation, you really think about it, and then you watch your mind resist. And then you go back over the meditations on the kindness of others, the defects of self-centeredness, the benefits of cherishing others. And you work on your mind again and again and again to get it to that point where, okay, let's try the meditation again and I'll take suffering and give happiness. Yeah. So the meditation is... it's a training. It's a training so that in our lives we can be more loving, wishing others to have happiness, more compassionate, wishing them to be free of suffering. Okay, so I'll start reading the chapter. When we understand that self-centeredness harms others and ourselves, and that cherishing others is a source of joy and happiness, we can, quote, quote, exchange self and others. So this doesn't mean I become you and you become me and your bank account becomes mine, but that would be okay. No, it doesn't mean that. Yeah. Okay, so it means that instead of thinking I am the most important person in the world, we think that others are more important. With this in mind, we can learn the taking and giving meditation, a meditation technique initially developed by Indian Buddhist sages and later popularized by Tibetan Buddhists. So the source actually goes back to Precious Garland by Nagarjuna, the line that he said in that verse, in that text. The taking and giving meditation is a powerful tool for eradicating self-centeredness and cultivating love and compassion towards all living beings equally. That means not favoring some and being biased against others. In our usual self-centered way, we think that if there is happiness to be had, we'll take it, leaving all the problems and sufferings for other people. That sounds good, doesn't it? Yeah, if there's happiness, I'll take it. Yeah, if there's problems, you can have it. Okay, however, in the taking and giving meditation, we shift our attitude, taking others' suffering with compassion and giving them our resources and happiness with love. This is a radically different way to think. Specifically, we reflect on those who are suffering and recognize that our self-centeredness prevents us from helping them. We do this until we find their suffering unbearable and experience strong compassion, wishing them to be free from misery. So finding others' suffering unbearable doesn't mean that I become depressed thinking of others' suffering. It means I have my focus on others and don't want them to suffer. Okay, so it's not, I can't stand to see you suffer because I feel distressed. It's, I can't stand to see you suffer because you're in pain. Okay. We then reflect on how wonderful it would be if they had happiness in its causes. With love, we mentally offer them our resources and happiness, imagining they experience the joy that they desire. The rationale behind the taking meditation is the opposite of our usual self-centeredness, in which we seek benefit and happiness for ourselves and relegate others' suffering and happiness to second place or ignore them completely. Okay? Because it's too much. It's too much. Sometimes we feel it's we can't handle the suffering of the world. Okay? This meditation is a way to keep our heart engaged without falling to personal distress. Since self-centeredness causes much of our suffering, it is appropriate and desirable to eradicate it. And since all our happiness is due to the kindness of others, it is suitable and beneficial to cultivate the attitude that cherishes others as much as we care about ourselves. Each time we do this meditation, we can choose a different type of suffering or a different group, a different person or a different group of people to focus on. In this way, our compassion will expand to include a wide variety of living beings and their diverse types of misery. You may be concerned that if you visualize taking on others' suffering, you might actually experience it. Yeah, like as long as I'm visualizing, this is good. But what happens if it works and I take on their suffering and I get sick or I get depressed or my life falls apart? Then I don't want to do this meditation. Okay? Do you see how our mind is sneaky and our self-centeredness now keeps interfering here? Okay. But the lamas always comfort us, that we each create our own karma. It's impossible to take on somebody else's karma. Okay. However, since this practice is done in the realm of the imagination and is motivated by compassion and love, this will not happen. I couldn't explain about karma in the book. Russell said that one, doesn't he? And I said, okay, as long as you don't say anger's in the brain. We got a deal here. If anything, the meditation will create a sense of spaciousness and joy in our hearts and a feeling of relief, knowing that mentally we can give others support and love while simultaneously ridding ourselves of self-centeredness. So this meditation may not physically or actually relieve others of their suffering and give them our happiness, but it works on a mental level that is extremely powerful. Yeah, very powerful. Just to talk about the benefits of it from a personal, give a personal example. Many years ago when I was living at a monastery in France, there was an infection in my big toe. Now, I don't know about you, but I usually don't think of my big toes very often. They're not a topic that I'm concerned with a lot. But when you have an infection, some kind of like internal boil or something, cyst in your big toe, it can hurt like mad. So the monastery was out in the countryside. I was in France. I didn't have a way to get to town. And I was thinking, okay, maybe tomorrow I'll go to the doctor. Meanwhile, that evening, the pain got more and more and more intense. And then I just said, what am I going to do? I have to make it through the night. So I started to do the taking and giving meditation. Yeah. And it helped me tremendously mentally with the situation, because I was suffering anyway. So as long as I was suffering, if I could think I'm taking on the suffering of others, then my own suffering had some meaning. If I don't take on the suffering of others, my own suffering doesn't have much meaning, except me complaining about it, which is not great meaning. But it really helped me, think about others. And to this day, when I do the meditation, I think, and everybody who has an infection in their big toe, I'm taking on their pain, because there's all sorts of problems that we have never dreamt of having until we have them. And to think that other living beings suffer from the exact same thing. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. So imagine, let's see. Imagine you were walking home after enjoying a nice pizza, carrying your leftover slices to have for lunch tomorrow. That sounds good. You come across a child in the street, dirty and crying. Asking her what's wrong, she says through tears, I'm hungry. Mama's working, and we don't have any place to live. Okay. How many kids in America live in that kind of situation? I lived in India, plenty of kids. In America, 2. Yeah. So what do you feel? You may find that her suffering moves you and compassion arises spontaneously within you. Perhaps you think, if I could take her hunger and loneliness away and experience it myself, I would do that. Touched by her suffering, you give her the pizza without a second thought. Yeah. You don't think, oh, it's so good, and I was going to eat it for lunch tomorrow, and now I won't have it, and I gave it to this kid, who's homeless. Why should I care about her anyway? You don't think about that. There's, some kid who's hungry, and, if you remember what that feels like when you were a kid, so you don't have a second thought. Her joy in receiving the pizza is all the thanks you need. Yeah, you don't need any more. Yeah. You don't need to tell the world you gave a kid a piece of pizza. And then all the world says, wow, you are fantastic. Yeah. The description below is brief, but it is sufficient for you to begin this practice of taking and giving. If you would like a more detailed explanation, please read Chapter 11 of Transforming Adversity into Joy and Courage by Geshe Champa Tekchok. And in the upcoming book, In Praise of Great Compassion, there's also a good section on the taking and giving meditation. Okay, so here's the reflection. Here's what you do. So observe your breath for a few minutes and let your mind settle. Because our own suffering is most potent for us, we begin to loosen the grasp of self-centeredness by taking on our own future suffering. Okay? While we are still concerned here with ourselves, it is ourselves in the future. So we're beginning to stretch our mind. Thinking in this way is a beginning step in that instead of our usual focus on our own happiness in the present, we now think years in advance of the person we will become. So think of yourself if you're 80 or 90 years old. Yeah. The elderly person we will become is sufficiently other than our present self that taking on his or her suffering and giving him or her our present resources entails reducing our present self-centeredness. Okay, so here we go. Locate the feeling of self-centeredness at the center of your chest. You know, when we feel strong emotions, happiness or sadness, we feel it here. And give it a form, such as a hard lump or a cesspool or something undesirable. Then in the space in front of you, imagine your future self when you're very old. Okay, so there you are, and reflect on the types of suffering you are likely to experience then. So the general sufferings of aging and sickness, fear of death and everything they entail, as well as various disappointments and frustrations when things don't go well. So there you are in a nursing home in the US, okay? And you understand that your kids put you there because it was dangerous for you to stay at home, and they wanted somebody to look after you because they couldn't do it properly. So you understand that. Yeah. But you're in this nursing home. It's not a great place. It's not an upbeat place. And then you hear about the coronavirus. And you hear about 10,000 people in the US in nursing homes having died from the coronavirus. That's just in nursing homes. And, you know, your family can't come and see you. The whole mood around the place is very depressed. Some of the workers there who were friendly with you, they're out sick. Some of the people, your friends in the nursing home, you hear are sick. You worry about if the virus is going around. You worry about yourself. You worry about your friends and your family. So you haven't met the Dharma. You have no way of learning how to work with your mind in this kind of situation. Okay, so think of your future self in that situation and wish him or her to be happy and to be free of all difficulties. Because if we live long enough, that could be our future, huh? And think, I am willing to take on her suffering so that she doesn't have to experience it. And imagine the suffering of your future self that comes out of your future self in the form of pollution, so that now your future self is free from that suffering. Yeah, they're free from the worry, the anxiety, the fear. Yeah. They're free from the physical pain that they're going through as elderly people. They're free of loneliness. So imagine that your future self is totally free of all of that, and is even free to leave and go stay with their family or somewhere else. With compassion, breathe in that misery in the form of pollution. As you do so, imagine the pollution that came from your future self transforms into a lightning bolt that strikes at the solid lump of self-centeredness at your heart. Or if you don't want it to be a lightning bolt striking at this lump of self-centeredness, it could be, some strong biodegradable soap that cleans out the cesspool at your heart. Okay? Don't drink Clorox when you do this meditation. Okay, the lump of self-centeredness is totally demolished due to the force of your compassion for your future self. Okay. So feel, your future self is completely free of that suffering. Like, whoa, doesn't that feel good? And you've taken what they don't want, their suffering, and used it to destroy what you don't want, that lump of self-centeredness and self-grasping at your own heart. So now experience a feeling of openness at your heart, the absence of that painful self-centeredness. And stay in that open space, free of self-preoccupation for as long as you can. Then, within that open space at your heart, imagine a bright light appears. And that light is the nature of your love, your wish for others to have happiness and it causes. So that love in the form of the light coming from the center of your chest radiates to your future self, filling your future self's body and giving him or her whatever he or she needs to be satisfied and live a meaningful life in the future. This may be material objects, it may be friends that they have in their life. It may also include inner qualities that will be essential for you to have in order to face the challenges that will lie ahead in your life. So you may even imagine freely giving your present body, wealth, and virtue to your future self by transforming it into whatever your future self will need. So do this with a happy mind, just thinking how happy that future self will be. Your future self receives this, and he or she feels fulfilled, secure, and at peace. Rest for a moment and experience the satisfaction that comes from alleviating someone's suffering and giving them joy. Okay. So we start off with our future self. Next, visualize a friend that you're fond of, somebody you care about. Think of the unhappiness or misery he or she may be experiencing and cultivate compassion, wishing them to be released from that fear and misery. Resolve to take on their suffering on yourself so that they will be free of it. And then do the same visualization as before. So your friend's suffering leaves them in the form of pollution that you gladly inhale. The pollution that you inhale transforms into a lightning bolt. It strikes at the lump of self-centeredness at the center of your chest. Okay? And it destroys the self-centeredness. It doesn't aggravate the center of your chest. It just destroys the self-centeredness. And feel the joy that comes from knowing your friend is free from suffering, and the relief that you are free of your self-preoccupation. How good that must feel for yourself and for the other person. Then imagine sending a bright light of love, the wish for them to have happiness in its causes, to your friend. And imagine transforming your body, your possessions, your virtue, everything that you think of as mine, everything that will benefit you, and giving it to your friend in the form of whatever it is they need. Okay, so not you're not giving them the actual things you have, you're transforming what you have into what they need. Your friend receives these and experiences true happiness and satisfaction. So you think that they receive that, and they receive not only the temporal happiness of this life, but think that, through your taking on their misery and giving them your body possessions and merit, that they can attain Buddhahood, that they progress on the path. And in turn, you experience joy at their happiness. Okay. Now do the same visualization for a stranger. So the stranger might be a person at the checkout in the grocery store, who's standing 6 feet in front of you. A wealthy person, a homeless person, a person in a war-torn country, someone suffering from cancer, or the healthcare professionals that care for them. It could be an animal that is mistreated or exploited. It could be a person who looks like they have everything in the world, but who are actually quite miserable inside. Okay, and then do the visualization as before, taking on their suffering with compassion, destroying the lump of your self-centeredness at your heart center, transforming your body, wealth, and virtue into whatever they need, and giving it to them with love, and without a sense of loss yourself. Sometimes we give things, and in the back of our mind, it's like, okay, I'm happy that I give it, but now I won't have it. I just gave them my wealth. I just imagined giving them my body. I just gave away all my virtue. What am I going to do now? Don't have that fear, that sense of loss. And then rest in deep satisfaction that comes from overcoming self-preoccupation and being of benefit to others. Okay, then next, continue doing the same visualization with people you don't like. This makes it very powerful. When it's somebody that you really don't like, somebody that your judgmental, critical mind rips to shreds. Okay, and instead, think of their misery and want them to be free of it. And think of what they need so that their own minds are happy and their behavior changes. Okay? And give that to them. So it's the same taking and giving meditation. And rejoice in the happiness that you have given to them and in the relief you experience from having loosened the hold of your own self-absorption. Be pleased that you have awakened this new state of mind and aspire to cultivate this compassionate wish to help all beings in every way you possibly can. So this practice is especially good to do when you are unhappy or ill. Usually when we're unhappy or ill, we would like somebody else to take on our suffering and give us their happiness. No. Okay, when you're a spiritual practitioner, you jump in the middle of it and you take on their misery and give them your happiness when you are unhappy or ill. Instead of feeling sorry for ourselves, which only exacerbates our misery, we focus on those who have similar problems and generate compassion for them, thinking, I am experiencing sickness or unhappiness, and it isn't going to go away immediately anyway. Okay, since this is the case, by my being uncomfortable, may all other beings be free from suffering. That is, may I take on the misery of others so that they may be free of their misery. Thinking like this gives purpose to our suffering in that it reinforces our feeling of connection to others and strengthens our compassion. It reminds us of all the other people who are in the same boat as us and puts our own difficulties into perspective so that we don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Yeah? So it's very helpful, this, because when we're sick, when we're unhappy, when we have a problem, it seems like, our difficulty takes over the entire scope of our world. We can't think of other people beyond our own nose because we're so, running around crazy, because of our own problem. And this helps us put it in perspective. It's like, it's not just me. It's not just me. It's everybody. Yeah. And we all have different problems and we all want different things to be happy. But that experience of suffering, that experience of happiness, those experiences are universal. Yeah, it's not just me who has them. It reminds us of all the other people who are in the same boat as us and puts our own difficulties into perspective so we don't make a mountain out of a molehill. It lightens our mood because we imagine others being well and happy. In addition, when we later encounter situations in which others need help, compassion will easily arise in our minds and we will not hesitate to help. We won't have to talk ourselves into it. If we do this practice sincerely, wishing others to be free from suffering, it amazingly has the effect of lessening our own suffering. But if we do this practice with the motivation to lessen our own suffering, it won't bring that result. If we do it with the motivation of increasing our love and compassion, if we do it with the motivation of connecting with others so we can give them happiness and take their suffering in the future, then that motivation will result in the lessening of our own suffering right now. But if we do the meditation of cultivating love and compassion with a self-centered mind, yeah, it's not going to bring that same result. Sometimes we wish we could do something to help others, but we don't know what to do because they live in another country and we don't know how to reach them. So in the time of the pandemic, do you often feel like that? Not just the pandemic, but usually, I don't know about you, when I see what's going on in the world, it's like, boy, there's so many people. I wish I could do something to help, but what can I do? When I see lines of people at the food bank, and the food bank running out of food, and farmers throwing milk in gutters and burying vegetables because the restaurants aren't buying it and they don't know how to get it to the supermarket and the other markets. It's like, I wish I were Superman, and I could just jump in there and bring all this food from the countryside into the city, give it to all these people. But like, what can I do? What can I do? So that can be quite painful. In other instances, we know the person, but they are not open to whatever help we want to offer. Yeah. We see somebody who, has a substance abuse problem. They don't want any help. Yeah. We see a kid who's being really rebellious and they're unhappy and they're getting into trouble and we want to help, and they don't want our help. Okay, so those are difficult situations too. So doing the taking and giving meditation in these kinds of circumstances also keeps our heart open towards these people and deepens our love and compassion. So they may not want our help now, but let us not respond with, well, you don't want my help, so forget you, kind of, okay, yeah, do it your way. Yeah, see if I care. This kind of, you don't want my help, so go make a mess of your life. Yeah, see if I care about it. Instead of having that attitude, which comes out of frustration and anger on our part, to be able to stay connected, at least in our heart with them, even if we're not able to directly help them at this time. Similarly, this meditation is excellent to do while watching the news. Okay? Instead of becoming despondent or cynical because of what is happening in the world, do this meditation. Really fantastic meditation to do when you're watching the news. Yeah. Awakening your love and compassion in this way is a powerful contribution to world peace, and it also counteracts any tendency to feel despair. Throughout the process of purposefully cultivating compassion and later acting that with compassion, humility is crucial. Okay? Truly compassionate people who are respected in society do not boast about their compassion or their generosity. Okay? With a genuine feeling of sisterhood and brotherhood, they go about their lives and remain modest. Try to follow their excellent example. Okay, so that's chapter 30. We have a few minutes for questions or comments.
Someone submitted some interesting statistics earlier when we were talking about children affected by poverty or hunger. And so they looked up on Poor People's Campaign website that in 2018, over 11 million children lived in food insecure households, and more than 1.5 million public school students experienced homelessness during the 2017 to 18 school year.
That's just in the U.S., huh? Yeah, amazing, isn't it? And how much do we even think about this? And how much of this is even an election issue? Is combating poverty even an election issue? And what's happening in religion in this country too, is acting with kindness and combating poverty and so on, even an issue for religious people? Or has it shifted? I remember when I was little, the evangelical community was very focused on issues of poverty and sickness. Yeah. Now, I don't hear that very much from them. Mm-hmm. So, these issues are important, but we have kind of gotten distracted from what's important.
There's a question. So this person says, I'm a newbie to meditation. Mm-hmm. I think this meditation you outlined sounds very useful, but are there ways to reroute your attention when you start to wander, especially when meditating on whom you hate?
Good question. If you start to wander, bring yourself back. If you are doing the meditation too slow, sometimes you may tend to wander more. So in that case, what you need to do is either do the meditation a little bit quicker, or better yet, add more detail to it. Yeah, so think more specifically of the suffering of the other person, or think more specifically of your possessions that you want, that you're going to give away. And don't just think of giving away the stuff that you haven't used in 10 years. Think of giving away the stuff you really like and it becoming what other people need. So, enrich the meditation, add more detail, make it more personal. With the person that you don't like, stick with it, because realize that your antipathy towards them causes you a lot of pain. Yeah, it causes you a lot of pain. And when we feel antipathy towards people, it it changes our whole feeling. And no matter who we're around, we are radiating negative energy. Even we're not around the person who we feel antipathy towards. We're in a bad mood. We dislike them. We're angry. We're upset, and we can't enjoy anything. And everybody we encounter, we're like, So, really think about the disadvantages of having so much anger and animosity, and see this meditation as a way that will help you overcome that. And also, this makes the meditation very interesting, okay? Think of the person that you don't like. Think of what they're suffering from. Yeah? Think of what it was like to grow up in their environment. Think of what it's like to be in their situation, with their way of thinking, with their mental difficulties. Yeah, make it really personal, and think of imagine you being them and living their life with their personality, and would you be a happy person? When you think like that, then it becomes much easier to have some feeling of connection and sympathy with that person that can help you, or empathy, I should say, with that person, that can help you generate love and compassion towards them.
Does this meditation really help the people we think about, or is it more for us to cultivate compassion?
I think it's more for us to cultivate love and compassion, but, just in the same way that making prayers and dedications for people can help them, this meditation probably has some unseen effect too on them. Go ahead. I'm glad people are asking questions.
Okay, this question is from Rashika.
Okay.
She says, when I went to Taiwan, I saw all the mosquitoes and how people would kill them, and I felt bad for them. When I wished them to be freed in that instance, every mosquito in Taiwan bit me. Because of that, I feel resistance to doing the taking and giving. How can I overcome that? And was me being bit a result of my karma, or of truly wishing them not to have suffering?
Yeah. I think you're getting bit was what was going to happen anyway, because you were in a place with mosquitoes. It didn't happen because you were doing the meditation. Yeah. So, so be brave and do the meditation again. You know, and try and think of what it's like to be a mosquito. Yeah. And just like, how would you feel? Like, you know, you're hungry and you want to eat and you're flying around trying to find something to eat. And all these people are either pushing you away or more likely, I mean, you're just trying to eat and your whole life is at risk. Yeah. And imagine being trapped in a mosquito's body. Yeah. Would you like to be born as a mosquito? When you think about it, I mean, what a horrible rebirth. You can't think about anything. Your intelligence is minimal. No way to create virtue or avoid non-virtue. Everybody wants to kill you. Yeah. Not a happy existence. Yeah. So when you see mosquitoes, pray for their good rebirth. Pray that they're no longer born, you know, as an insect like that, with that kind of misery.
I was thinking about the question of, does this help the other person?
Mm-hmm.
And the way I think of this, well, even if it wasn't doing Tonglen, just subduing my own anger, you know, like something has to shift then. And so the interactions change. So if the person is nearby, it definitely will change things for that other person, because you can't change on one side and not have it impact what is something that's co-arising.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is if the person's farther away, still I think things have an impact, like the ripple effect, you know, because we have a lot of connections with other people. And, you know, so I remember one time one of the general contractors that we were working with said, I'm going to deal with this in this certain way because I don't want my employee to go home and get upset with his wife because I gave him a hard time. You know, it's that thing. You know, we have a lot of impact on each other, and it can kind of go out very subtly or sometimes much more directly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.